Thank you for being here. My name is Lalumera. I'm an associate professor of philosophy at the University of Bologna in Italy. I did philosophy of medicine mainly, and with philosophy of language and philosophy of science. This also means that I'm not really an expert on any condition, particular mental condition. I'm not a therapist, right? But what I do in my research work basically is try to understand how people and the scientific community uses and also forms concepts and diagnostic labels. That's what I do mainly. So today my talk is about this new concept, AI psychosis, and it will be mainly as a methodological kind of talk. So okay, this is supposed to work, but not. Sorry, it was the only thing I was supposed to learn.
It's because I clicked around, but they're just having trouble with the audio. Apparently, there's a bit of feedback.
So there's a phenomenon going on. The phenomenon is kind of, it looks familiar because now we've been exposed to the label AI psychosis for maybe more than 2 years. So there's something going on. And I'm interested in the conceptual question. And what is the conceptual question is it a good concept to have? Right. So I'm now really interested in the empirical question: does AI cause psychosis? But in the evaluation of this new concept, of course, the two questions are related, but I would like to convince that they're not the same question. So do we need this concept? And I think in the end, the problem is, as for many labels and instrumental conceptual instruments that we use to talk about our experience and about mental health and science, it's a question of trade-offs, how much we gain and how much we lose in that. Still, sorry, can't moving. So in the end, what I would end saying is that it's better not to reify to consider this AI psychosis as it were a thing, so we can have prevention without reification. That's my conclusion in the end. Okay. Sorry, I think I need some help again. Okay.
Sorry, that's cool. So this is all the
No, it's okay. No, fine. Sorry.
It's all good.
Yeah, with errors.
This works, but it's just a bit slow.
Oh,
so just whichever you prefer.
So what is being called AI psychosis? A bunch of different things. Okay. There are some very spectacular cases, like the man who tried to assassinate Queen Elizabeth because he thought, well, he had a very close kind of dialogue with a large language model, and he got persuaded that he had both the means and the reasons to do it. And some other cases are more like cases of people who spent a huge amount of time engaged with the large language model, for example, ChatGPT, and they are like somehow in some way obsessed or completely entrapped into that. There are cases of people who fall in love or have deep emotional relations with the large language model. So it's a mixture of paranoia, paranoid conditions, delusional thinking, and stress. Okay, so this is there's a bunch of cases going on, and some are also of legal importance because they were brought to the jury. But what is the evidence? So as a philosopher of science, and from a very kind of strict point of view, I would say this evidence is kind of really fragmentary. These are very rare cases. We have some, case reports. We have narrations. We have reports from the news. We have very heterogeneous presentations, these cases, and all the literature that's the scientific literature. I mean, not the news openings or the news articles. All the scientific literature is kind of at an early stage. So so let me say early at this point, what I'm not going to say is talk. I'm not going to say that, I'm not denying that there's some harm going on. I'm not denying that people are suffering, having problems with these new technologies. And I'm not denying that there can be, what's this related to? AI use. And I'm not even defending, the big companies like OpenAI or whatever. I'm not, paid by that in any case. And I'm not even saying that there's no causal link, right, between the use of large language models and stress problems and paranoid problems. What I want you to reflect on me is, so is that the good, the best label, for the problem? Is that the best label to introduce a new kind of diagnostic entity into our conceptual vocabulary? That's the level of my discourse, I would say. Okay, so trying again to move, but it's kind of impossible. So
You need to click on the slide and then go back to the slide rather than on.
yes, it does.
Like click the mouse.
Click with the mouse on the slides. Yes, thank you. It's not nice to be old because I have this problem with, if I put the glasses, okay, Anyway, so the conceptual question is not can AI cause psychosis, but should we introduce AI psychosis? And because I think maybe there are experts here. Is it better or worse to have it? So that's the conceptual question. So what I'm interested in what are what is the conceptual evaluation of this concept? I think when we have a new concept, a new diagnostic label in medicine, in psychiatry, in psychology, and when we talk about these kind of phenomena, there's a need that the concept is meant to fulfill some objectives, saying, and there's evidence, so there's something about reality that we want to represent or interpret or not. But also there are alternatives. We can think about, well, is the best concept we could use? And there are trade-offs, meaning that then we can evaluate. So to make it slightly less, I would say, abstract, think about obesity as a disease or obesity as a risk condition. Or when people discuss about long COVID. Now, is it a good concept to have, or is it better to just think about how people were after having COVID? So these are trade-offs that the scientific community needs to discuss about, because it's not that evidence, is just so open. The book of nature is not so open to us like it were like we thought it could be. Okay, so it's about my one possible intuition is that it's not really a disorder or a condition, but it's something like it's it is often the case that psychotic experiences and delusions are triggered by the context, and by the context I mean, for example, by a religious community and by the beliefs within a religious community, or by older media. There were these examples of, when TV was a big thing many years ago. People thought, well, now children and adolescents will be controlled by TV, and this idea of TV psychosis and stuff. And when internet got big and social media boomed, then there was social media addiction, and also some problems linked specifically with some uses of social media. So one way to think about AI psychosis is that it's continuity with these media and context-induced kind of problems. Of course, what AI adds are some very interesting features. For example, AI and large language model are interactive, so they are not like TV. They're not passive. They do respond. They do a lot of person-like interaction, and they can kind of form a personality with time. They look a lot like humans in conversation, and the person engaged in a conversation with a chatbot, a large language model like ChatGPT and stuff, can have feedback loops in which they can be reinforced their beliefs, just like they had a human person on the other side. And of course, and also there's this feature called psychosis, which means that, especially ChatGPT, reinforces and is very kind to you, and it tries never to be specific corrections, but it's always complimenting what you do and reinforcing psychophancy, and to the point of not correcting mistakes. So, but is it a new disorder then? Is it a new condition, or is it just a new medium? Okay, is it just a new medium that we need to understand better in its specificity? So there's a very interesting article that came out on the Lancet medical journal a few months ago, 2026 anyway. And it says, well, there are many roles that large language models and AI can take in these kind of conditions. So what we indicate as AI psychosis is really a bunch of very different things because of the different role that AI takes in the different cases. It can be a catalyst, so it triggers or it exaggerates existing symptoms. Okay, so a person, for example, that is already in a vulnerable position on a very bad day, and say, with prolonged contact with the AI agent, okay, this is one case. It can be an amplifier, meaning that when being psychophantic, they can put fire on a sparkle or whatever. So an amplifier would be a person has some hints of a very unusual or kind of delusional belief, and then with AI, this person can build on it in some way. So, for example, you can imagine the person who went to the Windsor Castle and the chatbot, helping him, adding on details to his story. In this case, also, the AI can be co-author in shaping the delusional scenario, but also the large language model can be the object in cases in which the person is involved sentimentally with this projection of person that they see in the chatbot. So in some of these cases, it's about, a vulnerability that is already there. So it's about, it's just a case of triggering something that is there already, but in different ways. So what this article suggests, I'm kind of agreeing with them, is that, well, as soon as you differentiate these different roles that AI can have in the mixed bag that we're now calling AI psychosis, well, it might well be that there are different mechanisms behind that. So it's not just the same thing. So we currently lack. So going back to the evidence, from a kind of scientific point of view, of course we do lack a lot of stuff for the proper validation of this kind of diagnostic label or scientific concepts, because the numbers are small basically, and okay, the research is now starting. It's not something that has been going on forever. So we don't know how frequent it is. We don't know how to operationalize it. We don't have a standard definition, so that it is not possible really to count cases, because we don't know what counts as a case. So it's like in this. So at the moment, there's no stable phenomenon. The causation is not resolved, but we will know more about this from a talk in the afternoon about the causation. So my impression here is that we are moving faster with naming than with knowing. So the label is coming very soon, too soon. Okay, let's move to evaluation proper. That's what I am interested in. Sorry. So how can we evaluate this concept? First, what needs does it serve? To empower people to understand things, to prevent, to enable prevention. Second question, does it track real phenomena? Is it like empirically adequate, as philosophers would say? 3, do we have better alternatives? Because concepts are instruments. We can also switch between slightly different alternatives in these cases, because when phenomena are so fuzzy and complicated, it's not just that you have a definition, like when you say, well, I want to talk about squares, and what is a square? Where is a plane figure with 4 sides, 4 equal angles? I mean, there's not much to choose, right? But in these cases, I think there is. And what are the consequences? Good. Needs. So why do we need a concept like AI psychosis? Well, we need to increase vigilance. We need to have, to have people care about a possible problem, enable early detection, support prevention, which is kind of raise public awareness also for people who are on medication, for parents, and attract policy attention, do something at the level of society, I guess. So these are good. I think they are very good, important goals. So that so it's important to have some way to represent or to deal with these kind of phenomena. Okay, but my worries are, as I told you before, is that maybe the phenomenon in question is kind of not really uniform, as at least from what we know so far. There's no stable definition, no shared mechanism, maybe. There are heterogeneous kind of causal chains going on. Also because there's limited evidence. And so is it a coherent phenomenon? So it is not an isolated case, because many diagnostic labels that we use in psychology, psychiatry, and also in real life in discourse, well, maybe the condition that the phenomenon there is kind of messy, but I mean, well, I'm not saying that it's the only one case, right? Okay, suppose someone said that, oh, you are wrong, there's a causation link. There's, God told me that it really is a causal law between AI use and some kinds of episodes that we can. Well, I don't think that causation will really solve the problem, because you can have a kind of a causal relevance and still it's not enough to justify a new concept, a new diagnostic label. So in some cases, we with mental health condition, we just classify them from their causes, but it's not always like that. And sometimes we don't know the causes, and some other times the causes are, we don't see. You can say unemployment may cause depression, right? Or but we don't have an unemployment depression as a label, but because it's not enough, right, to have a causal link to establish a kind of diagnostic condition, even though you can have a very solid evidence of causal links. But also because causes are like so much, context dependent, non-specific, and multi-level. So what would what would justify a new concept in that area? That's the problem of validation, I guess. In scientific terms, it's really difficult. But I think new concepts in this area can be justified when they identify a stable pattern, when they support prediction and intervention in an effective way, and when they improve on existing frameworks, and also when people like them. Also, that there has to be some kind of uptake by the people who are affected by the condition to some extent. This is really important. So sometimes concepts in psychiatry, psychology, and mental health, they are created and then tested for a while to see if they work, and this is normal, even if maybe the mechanisms behind them are still not very clear. So, for example, the concept of high risk in psychosis. Okay, maybe there's a big debate on how these work exactly, but they are effective for prevention. Or think of concepts like mild cognitive impairments. Well, it's the causal status remains very, very variable, very varied, very, very different from case to case, but still it is important because it identifies one stage that matters for the life of an individual. And outside psychiatry, I go back to the concept of long COVID that has, now is being stabilized as a diagnostic category. People are still discussing what the mechanisms are, but it protects people. People wanted it so much. It really, it was created and by people. There's this very, much quoted article that is how people created long COVID. They wanted it for their, in order to have rights to have healthcare, to coverage for their condition. So these are, the empirical validation, the prognostic efficacy, and the social uptake, and also the fact that people endorse it are very good, good ways to establish a concept. I think, well, in our case, these are kind of lacking. There are alternatives. We can really think about, paradigms we already have for covering these cases that are covered by the label of AI psychosis. But one could say, well, but why you so, why not having just one more concept? I mean, why not? It's a good intention after all. But I think, having new concepts always comes with a cost. Because they shape attention, they guide diagnosis, they structure research, they influence policy, they shape reality and what can the harms be I tend to think that there can be a problem of misattribution when we classify something as a case of AI psychosis. Well, of course, we are some kind of putting into in the background underlying vulnerability, but also social context. People can be lonely, people can be not supported. Social context is important, and clinical history. So there can be a misattribution, not just AI. There can be overgeneralization in the sense that, well, as I said before, maybe it's about grouping different things that different people do with different kind of AI. And it's not nice to have less precision. And so do you think there can also be a risk of over-pathologizing everyday use? Because, our generation, maybe, I'm 52, but, younger people use AI and large language models a lot. And they can also be super helpful in, educational contexts and in many cases. And so, having a mental condition or something that is called AI psychosis, right, is kind of suggesting some risk in general. So it might be that normal behavior becomes suspect, increased stigma, moral panic, things like that. Misdirected research and policy. So yeah, it happens when there can be some hype. Okay, now we are all studying AI psychosis. Now we are all studying AI psychosis as if it were a disease. Well, maybe resources can be diverted too soon on that kind of case. So in conclusion, AI psychosis, it serves legitimate aims, I think. It is something that it's important to think about what's going on at that level, but it lacks, I think, epistemic grounding. So far, it's sparse, it's a mixed bag of things. It is maybe not necessary because there are, very specific instruments to describe and explain those cases, while still saying metaphorically that it's about AI psychosis. It carries some risks. So I would say it's a weak conceptual choice. Okay, we can have prevention without reification of this label. And yeah, we can treat AI use and large language models with a framework of risk factor and not with a framework of disease or label or syndrome. And there can be many mechanisms in which we can study AI as in entering the mechanisms of risk, of psychotic risk. So I skip over these because I'm out of time, but I think that what we gain from a risk framework is that, well, it avoids the label, the premature reification, it accommodates the variety of cases, it aligns with, existing psychiatric frameworks. And yeah, let's go and study the specific mechanisms which AI enters risks. And yeah, it might be a modulator of general vulnerability factors. So I would say treat AI as a risk modifying factor, study the role within existing pathways of vulnerability. I don't see it as a terrible conceptual choice, the AI psychosis label. The problem is not whether AI contributes to kinds of harm and damage, but how we choose to study it and to talk about it. So AI psychosis is not a discovery, it's something that we kind of build together, and maybe with a little bit of more modesty could be beneficial to everyone. Thank you.